Money Matters is brought to you by
Stanbic Bank, moving forward.
As Uganda looks forward to the budget day that will happen next week, and that budget will most likely be presented from right here at the Serena Conference Center, the country's fiscal discipline is coming yet again under the spotlight. Now, in the past financial year that is coming to an end now, government has passed several supplementary budgets, the biggest being in December last year when they passed 548 billion shillings. The problem to many is not that supplementary budgets are being passed, but the fact that they're going towards government expenditure as opposed to development. Welcome to Money Matters. Just hold on to that thought. We will be revisiting it a bit later in this program. For now, however, here's a look at what else is coming up on the program. The Economic Transformation Power in Agricultural Value Addition. Utilizing SIM card technology for fleet tracking. And exploring the new techniques in employee talent searching. But first, international financial reporting standards are a parameter against which the accounting and financial soundness of most reputable businesses are benchmarked. Adoption of these standards, however, remained beyond the reach of most businesses in several countries like Uganda, where mainly the informal, small and medium enterprises are the key economic drivers. In View from the Top this week, we speak to Richard Martin. He's the head of financial reporting with ACCA Global, and he takes us through the institution's plans to take the reporting standards down to SMEs. Helping us understand what IFRS is and what value it brings to businesses.
Well, IFRS are a system of globally accepted and developed standards that are being applied all around the world currently for listed companies in about 100 countries around the world. That's all the major, many of the major countries apart from the United States of America.
Let's take a look at the uptake. I mean, you mentioned 100 countries. Let's zero in on Uganda.
Yep.
How has been the response here?
Well, the response here has been that IFRS has been the basis of listed company accounts here for some time, for those that are listed on the Uganda Stock Exchange. And with the development of the IFRS for SMEs, which is a special set of standards produced for SMEs, well, for all privately held companies. That happened in 2009, and the official take-up is from this year onwards of that standard.
You've mentioned that obviously this is an international standard, and
Yep.
you've seen it's mainly been applicable to listed companies. Now that we talk
That's where
about
it began, really.
Where it
Yeah.
began.
Yeah.
When we talk about SMEs,
Yes.
and mainly in Uganda here, where they don't see the need or there's no appreciation for some of these practices.
Yep.
What is, I mean, from your initial observations, what has been the response, and why is there a reluctance to take it up?
I don't know that there. I don't know from what I've from what I can see, there has been a great deal of reluctance to take it up among the accountants. I think there's a sort of recognition that this is the right thing. This is the right thing to do. But it, like any change, it takes a bit of time for it to get through and to happen. So it is a global standards. It's a global benchmark. That I think is helpful, but I don't think it will involve shouldn't involve major changes from what was best practice before.
Okay. Now, just to illustrate that point a bit further, if a small business has been accounting best practice as it was done before, why then do this? I mean,
justify why they should, what is the value that comes to a small business in implementing IFRS?
Right. I mean, I think if I might make a distinction between accounting and reporting here, every business ought to be doing accounting to keep track of where it is, how it's progressing, whether it's growing, and so on. And that, in a way, is up to businesses how they decide they should do that best. When it comes to reporting to outsiders on the accounting, then I think there are good reasons why that should be done to a particular standard, because a common party here involved is the bank. If you want to access bank loan and finance, they may ask for financial statements for your past record, and on a continuing basis, while the loan is outstanding, may ask for updates each year when you produce your accounts.
Let's take a look at the industry or the profession of accounting itself.
Yeah.
How is that going? Are we seeing a growth? Is there any growth? What is the trend in terms of accounting as a profession globally and also here in Uganda?
ACCA is a global professional body for accountants, and we're I suppose experiencing growth in our numbers of around the 5% mark globally. Faster here in Uganda, growth rates for us of 10%.
Let's take a look at, I don't know if you can comment on this, but levels of professionalism within the profession. Maybe not necessarily ACCA members, but there are fly-by-nighters out there, people who claim to be professional accountants and will offer their services to some of these SMEs and then not be able to do a professional job. What can be, I mean, have you come across such cases, and what can be done what are you doing to try to curb that?
It's a tricky one. In many countries, and Uganda's no exception here, the term accountant is one that anybody can use. It's not like a doctor,
medical
for example,
a
medical doctor. But I think people have got to people should recognise that there are certain qualified accountants, and those, in my view, are the people that you should be able to rely on most.
Lastly, obviously, business, the world is changing all the time. How are you tailoring your training of professionals, as ACCA, to meet with the ever-changing environment from a business perspective, technology, things like that, and also in a broader perspective as a profession to provide services to businesses that are relevant to the times that we're moving into. So as ACCA, as a body, and as a profession.
Yes, I mean, I think I don't think there would be much difference between them. I think the ACCA is a leading global body, and we are always looking at our syllabus and regularly revising the syllabus to make sure that it does reflect what are the likely demands in the future. So, and our syllabus revision is based on surveys of our members and surveys of companies and other users of accounting services to see what they're expecting from accountants, and some of the things that have changed over the years. The emphasis on ethics has increased a good deal, because I think that's seen as a very important thing that users want. They want to feel that accountants can be trusted, and trust is based on ethical behaviour.
The 2010-2011 financial year is coming to an end on what some in the financial circles consider a bloated expenditure note. The sentiment amongst many is that government has spent more on itself than it has done on development expenditure. Advocates of this argument cite the examples of the 1.7 trillion shillings used for purchase of fighter jets, as well as the 500 billion shilling supplementary budget passed in December last year, most of which went towards government expenditure. Well, today we take a look at government's fiscal discipline and its wider economic implications.
Come the 8th of June, Uganda will read its budget for the financial year 2011-12. The outgoing budget for 2010-11 continued to expose inconsistencies which others boldly call indiscipline.
Right now, the indiscipline is intrinsic to the system because the very authorities, the very power centers that would address issues of budget indiscipline and budget leakages are the very beneficiaries of the system.
Economists would call budget indiscipline as spending outside the budget framework to produce expenditure deficits. But that's not the indiscipline meant here. To start with, budget supplementaries, while legitimate, can at times amount to indiscipline.
To conform to the regularizing those expenses, anything exceeding 3% is constitutional, it's a legal requirement, and Parliament does it to normalize. But all over and above, we should discourage supplementaries, and we think the period which had a lot of challenges, the election year, whether you like it or not, has its challenges. Now that that is done, we think we shall be able to overcome that.
In a parliament that is predominantly for the ruling party, objecting to supplementaries that may be questionable, usually from the executive, becomes difficult, and how shall abuse be stemmed then? Still speaking of the big supplementary this financial year of 650 billion shillings, there was denial and assertion as to whether money was diverted to non-productive areas.
Strictly speaking, that's also not true, that we shifted the money from recurrent to development. Yes, around January, there was huge expenditure for the election to be run because its cash flow concentrated of the Electoral Commission concentrated around that time. But since that time, we have continued providing resources to poverty reduction areas, which are both recurrent and development. And the government, most projects are funded by donors and co-funded with government. Those have continued to be implemented.
Capital infrastructure projects are likely to be the ones that may have been hurt by this reallocation to recurrent expenditure. And usually also some social services which also have a long lead time, whether it's construction of hospitals, schools.
Speaking of allocations, there is still a bias towards non-productive sectors, particularly public expenditure that takes up more than 20% of the budget.
Production sectors like agriculture, like environment and natural resources, like trade, tourism and industry, that they are allocated the smallest share of the budget, tells you that there is something wrong with the way we conceptualize our budget process.
Because public expenditure on administration should be minimum, should be kept minimum. You start from Parliament, it's too big.
Maybe less emphasis on administrative and recurrent, civil service wages, apart from, of course, the key civil servants like, the police and maybe the doctors, teachers, and less of what we're seeing in the papers today in terms of what the MPs are trying to do with respect to their salaries as the first session of Parliament.
So, the budget will be read. Probably taxes will not be increased. But the feeling from most analysts is that this year, productive sectors may get attention, but there remains the spot, in that when members of Parliament start to get expensive cars and multiply their emoluments, who will stop the excesses that come from elsewhere? To whom does the moral right belong, therefore?